Welcome back to Grand Tactician Civil War Union Campaign. Before getting into where we left off from last episode and proceeding with unpausing the time, I want to start off with making an observation here about the naval situation overall. As we're getting into 1862, and there was some activity over the winter. We had a little bit of siege stuff going on, but it was mainly a time of building and policy, research and training troops for both the United States and the Confederacy. And where we're at right now is just to kind of overview where we stand on all this stuff. National morale. Ours is fantastic, and that's primarily because we've won almost every battle that we've fought. And so we've got pretty much sky-high national morale in the U.S. And it's still high, but it has been slowly dropping for the Confederacy. So that we're in good shape there. We're in good shape on national support, for much the same reason. The Confederate armies are still higher morale than ours, and to be frank, I don't really know why. They've suffered defeat after defeat after defeat, but the average morale of the Confederate army remains pretty good. I don't know if that's just an AI thing or a difficulty setting or just the fact that at least at this stage of the war, the starting generals in the Confederacy probably have higher stats. That's probably a factor, but it is what it is. But there is a distinction between Army morale and national morale. It's the national morale that we need to get down to win the campaign. And the target number, if I recall correctly, is 25. So we got a long way to go, but we're making progress. Theoretically, the national morale could be below 50, while the Army morale is still very, very high. So getting the Army morale down is a means to an end, but it is not it's not an end goal in and of itself, if that makes sense. In any case, men fielded. The Confederacy has passed conscription. The United States has not. So I would expect that the Confederate numbers of men in uniform will increase pretty substantially over the next several months. But that will start to affect their Army morale. And for now, will I eventually go to a draft? Probably. But right now, we still have over 100,000 in our volunteer manpower pool. Now, a lot of those are going to get eaten up because we've got another wave of enlistments expiring fairly soon. And probably in dealing with that is probably when I may or may not implement a draft. But any volunteers coming in now are into 36-month contracts. But we'll just have to see how that goes. I don't want to draft if I don't have to. I may have to. I'm going to come back to Navy tonnage in a moment. Because of our string of victories, our military experience is edging, starting to edge significantly ahead of the Confederacies. And if I understand the game correctly, and I may not, because there's a lot of things about this game I don't really understand, but This essentially acts as a multiplier. The individual leaders have their stats, their initiative, their leadership, admin, and cunning. And those stats can vary some. Promotion affects those stats. If you over promote someone too fast, like from captain all the way up to brigadier general, he will lose stats because, you know, he's got really good leadership as a captain or a major. That doesn't necessarily mean he's got that same level of acumen in those qualities at the general officer level. But whatever those stats are then modified by their military experience. And an individual officer's military experience is kind of capped by the military experience of the nation. Kind of a, you know, lessons learned throughout the entire Army. And so individual officers can get better as the nation gets better because everyone's learning, right? So if we can continue the string of victories longer term, and if the United States military experience continues to widen the gap, then eventually we get to a point where even if our officers' individual stats may not be quite the same as, you know, quite as good as an opposing Confederate general's stats, if they have significantly higher experience, then they get more utility out of the stats that they have. I don't know if I explained that as well as I could have, but in any case, military experience is a good thing. We're doing okay on the casualties. Based on the casualty ratios in the battles that we fought, it feels like the gap even ought to be a little bit greater than it is. So I'm not sure. There may be, I don't know. It just feels like that ought to be a little bit more. The trade warfare, this is basically Confederate raiding versus our blockade. And clearly our blockade has done, this is a cumulative number, right? This is basically the amount of money that has been lost since July 1861. And clearly our blockade has had a much bigger effect than Confederate raiding has. Both in an absolute sense, simple 19 versus 6 million, but also keep in mind that this is 19 million scooped out of a smaller economy than ours. So in a relative sense, these numbers are even more disparate. And then weapons industry with our industrialization, up above, you know, I don't know exactly what this number means, but our weapons industry is significantly, you know, what is that, about 3 times as much as what the Confederacy is able to put out. And that goes back, I think, to our initial policy selection at campaign start, where I took a policy that impacted Confederate arms at the beginning of the war. Now, so in most things, things are going our way. Now I want to come back up to naval tonnage. And this one's got me a little worried, might be a strong term, but bottom line is we started out with something like 10 times the tonnage of the Confederate Navy. And we have built some. This has come up some, but we started at almost 100,000 tons already at the beginning of the campaign, and we're up to 120,000. The Confederates up to over 80,000 tons, which is about, and they started at something like 10. So they have done a lot of naval construction, and I don't really know where. And I don't know if it's, I basically just have very little information or idea where and in what kind of ships they have added something like 70,000 tons of warship tonnage. Now that might just be a whole bunch of fourth-rate steamers that are just going to feed themselves into the meat grinder of our large blockade squadrons, maybe. But I have to kind of honor the possibility that there may be some fairly substantial warships in this, and I don't know if it's on rivers or seagoing stuff, and I just don't know. And to guard against kind of a surprise of, oh my gosh, they've actually got like an ironclad fleet that can do some real damage to my forces, I've embarked on a little bit of a naval building program as a just-in-case kind of measure. And in the last episode, just kind of seeing what was happening to my ironclad fleet, I had already started building some more monitors, which I did primarily because monitors are capable on both sea and river, right? They're more flexible in that way. But I've built additional ships. This right up here at the top, these are primarily captured Confederate steamers from various battles that we're just fixing up and provide more riverine presence wherever I may feel like I want it. These are the monitors I started building in the last episode. But I've also started building 8 river ironclads. And I have started building 8 regular sail frigates under the idea that I may run into a situation at some point this year where I lose some blockading frigates. And I also did this because even though the ironclad monitors have better guns, they only have the few. So I'm also going to, I also thought about maybe trying a fort busting fleet of all frigates, just relying on number of guns and see how that works. It may not work, or all those guns may overcome a fort faster. That's part of my experimentation and kind of trying more with naval stuff in this game. And the final thing I've done is I have gone ahead and ordered up 8 seagoing ironclad frigates, which I think are probably the most expensive but the most powerful ships available in this game. Will I need them? I don't know. But 80,000 tons of Confederate Navy, in whatever form it is, I've never seen the AI build like that before. And this suggests it would be better to have those ironclad frigates and not need them than to need them and not have them. All right, enough on that. Just a quick run over the theaters. No big changes. Lion is just about finished with his fort over here. And then I think I'm going to kind of move him over this way, take this supply depot, maybe kind of try to find that Missouri State Guard, which is implied to be somewhat in this area. Army of the Ohio has got a little bit of a supply situation. They just completed a supply depot, but that supply depot has not had time to get populated with supplies. I am moving the 1st Corps over in this direction, hopefully to draw some supply from Clarksville. I'm also moving the headquarters down to this area, if I can click on it. There he is. Yeah, I'm kind of moving the Corps down this way. My plan is to send the 2nd Corps down to take Nashville. I don't think there's any Confederate forces in the immediate area. Well, they are forming the Army of Tennessee over here by Chattanooga. There's the headquarters, and there's at least 1 Corps. Looks like he's just got the 1 Corps. And then we also have the Army of Mississippi with Fields Corps building around Corinth. Individually, either of these armies, not too worrisome against the Army of the Ohio, but if they can combine, that could actually be there would be parity. They would have something like 35 to 40,000 compared to Grant's. I think he's got about he's got about 60,000 men. What I would like to do is capture these 3 forts. That should kind of open up these rivers, and I gotta think that that's gotta have a good effect on supply. But for this year, Grant's objective is Nashville and taking these 3 forts if I can. McClellan is almost finished with his fort at Lewisburg to close off this avenue for the Confederacy into West Virginia. The new Army of the Shenandoah under Marsena Patrick is under orders to move into the lower Shenandoah and take Winchester. The Army of Northern Virginia in the Confederacy is forming and has formed rather, and let's see, what are they up to? 62,000 men in 3 corps. There's Pierce's corps here, Longstreet's corps, and then down here co-located with the independent Army of the Shenandoah. There's also, it's hard to get the mouse over tooltip on it, but underneath the Army of the Shenandoah there is Magruder's Corps, which is part of the Army of Northern Virginia. There's also an independent Army of Georgia bopping around up in this area that has been a nuisance. It's not very large. Hampton's Legion was sitting down around Williamsburg, not visible right now. He's moved off somewhere. And Polk's command is still in Virginia as well, and is actually up to 15,000 troops. So basically, the Army of the Potomac has got about 80,000 men, but the Confederate forces arrayed along here, both in the ANV and some independent commands, match that. And then finally, as we saw in the last episode, last 2 episodes really, we've got a kind of a funny situation here where the Army of the Shenandoah was sitting right here. Our ironclad squadron comes in, takes some time, took about a month, but beat Fort Norfolk down to 0 condition. That combat ended, that bombardment ended, but did not have a result. There was no win or loss. It just ended as Jackson's force came ashore. It was sitting here waterborne. Then there was a land battle, which Smith won, and Jackson retreated up to Petersburg. As soon as that occurred, we went right back into a second bombardment. And our force has been pretty significantly degraded for readiness and condition because of the first battle. But somehow this fort was reset to 100%. So I think there was some kind of game glitch there where this squadron basically successfully did its job, didn't get credit for it, and is now having to do that job all over again, having lost one ship and having others pretty significantly degraded. And Farragut is pretty low on ammo. Now, right now, that bombardment is not going on because I booted up the game and I have not yet unpaused time. But as soon as I do, this bombardment is going to be in progress. So I think that the Ironclad Squadron proved its ability to do the job, but is now, for some reason that shouldn't be happening, having to do it twice. So I've given it orders to pull back, and then I'm going to go put it in port and let it reconstitute itself. In the meantime, Army of the Chesapeake is capturing the city of Norfolk, and I would expect that once that completes and once this Ironclad Squadron disengages, if it can, it will then besiege the fort. Okay, so that's kind of a preamble there. I rambled on about everything that's going on in the campaign map, and I am going to unpause time now. Yeah, this bombardment is kind of in the Confederates' favor. But Farragut is slowly disengaging. I hope he's able to do so before he loses ships. Okay, it looks like he has. Okay. Just going to go put him back up at Annapolis. He's actually at red readiness now. Going to a port was the only action available to him. That's all right. Okay, looks like Polk is coming down to contest Norfolk against Smith. Or not. Smith has captured Norfolk, and this supply depot is now well, it's showing blue, but it's still saying Confederacy. Okay, wait a minute. I'm a little bit confused because I'm having an ability to exchange units with Fort. We don't have Norfolk in our list. We do have Fort Walker. I think that's the one out in Missouri. Oh, the Army of Georgia is up to 17,000 planned, 11,000 currently on hand. Yeah, their numbers are coming up for soldiers. I think I would prefer for Patrick to come up a little bit higher in readiness before engaging the Army of Georgia at Winchester. I'm going to get the Army of the Missouri moving toward Clarksville. First Corps is now at 100% supply. Second Corps almost 100%. Strangely, drawing supply from this Confederate infrastructure point. I'm going to go ahead and move the Second Corps into Nashville. With the HQ position, the First Corps would be well in range to reinforce if the Second Corps is attacked. Seems like Smith should be plenty close enough to siege this fort. Don't know why he's not. Maybe just a little movement will force that issue. Okay. Okay, it looks like we're about to have a second Battle of Norfolk. About 15,000 men in the Army of the Chesapeake, a little bit less than that, a little over 14,000 infantry, against Polk's command, with less infantry, but he's got some cav. And I believe that I will save that for the next episode. Thank you very much for watching.